Gao Shen never dreamed that his ordinary life would be completely changed by a sudden crossing. He couldn't have imagined that this inexplicable journey made him the head coach of the European giant Real Madrid. At the beginning of 2006, Real Madrid was in the most turbulent period in the past decade. On the morning of February 28, after firing the head coach Luxembourg and technical director Sachai successively, Real Madrid's performance still did not improve. Under the pressure of strong public opinion inside and outside the club, Chairman Florentino took the blame and resigned. As usual, Martin, the first vice-chairman, took office. In the afternoon, the new chairman Martin came to the Valdebebas training base. In the stunned shock of everyone, he resolutely fired the acting head coach Carlo, and pointed to an inconspicuous intern in Carlo's coaching staff. "What is your name?" "Profound." "Goal?" "Good name, what we need most now is to score." After 3 sentences, Gao Shen became the new coach of Real Madrid. Everyone thinks that the famous Madrid tycoon went crazy after he became the president of Real Madrid. Martin left, and Carlo, who was fired, also left, but Valdebebas turned into a mess. For the first time, everyone noticed this intern rookie who had just joined Carlo for half a year and was admired by Carlo. Many people's impression of him was that his name was pronounced the same as the Spanish goal Gol, but they never thought he would. So he became the Real Madrid coach. Before the coaching staff could react, the players were the first to attack. What team is Real Madrid? The greatest top giants of the 20th century selected by FIFA. In the new century, they won 2 Champions Leagues. The team gathered Ronaldo, Zidane, Beckham, Owen, Raul, Carlos, Casilla. Sri Lanka and a group of the world's top superstars can be said to be the most powerful team in the world. Let a rookie who just walked out of school and just got his coaching certificate to coach Real Madrid, which is full of superstars. Isn't this crazy? All the players glared at Gao Shen, and none of them could accept the result. All of this has nothing to do with the involuntary loftiness, but when he was pushed out, he had to bear this anger. "You go to the Bernabeu to resign now, otherwise don't blame us for being rude." Brazilian left-back Carlos came to Jace Hen, gritted his teeth and shouted angrily, and left the training ground without looking back. He is one of the captains of the team and is qualified to give such a threat. The others also left one after another, leaving only Gao Shen standing alone on the empty training ground, looking so lonely and helpless. In the coach's rest area in the locker room, Gao Shen turned on the faucet, and the tap water spewed out immediately. Reaching out his hands, he slapped the cold tap water in his hands, and covered it all over his face. His whole body was agitated. The cold feeling spread all over his body, and his whole body was stimulated, and he woke up from the shock of crossing. Gao Shen raised his head and looked at the wet face in the mirror, which was exactly the same as him before the time travel, which made him reveal a helpless, wry smile. He never thought that the standard of the chosen son in the online novel would actually happen to him. But that doesn't make sense. Because he never thought of going through time travel, nor did he do a lot of preparatory work for time travel like the heroes of online novels, checked a lot of information, and after all the preparations were foolproof, he traveled to the past to write a pen and slap his face. But what about him? Not to mention that there is no preparation, as soon as he crosses over, he will have to take a dog. It doesn't look like Long Aotian's script. Is it because I scolded the national football team last night? Gao Shen muttered to himself. Last night, he watched a World Cup qualifier for the national football team. Sure enough. Cherish life and stay away from national football. What should we do now? Gao, have you become the head coach of Real Madrid? When Gao Shen was talking to himself in the mirror, a young Spanish man about his age rushed in from outside. His name is Fernando Lucas, a native of Madrid, Gao Shen's only friend now. In Lucas's words, 3 generations of his grandfather and grandchildren are fans of Real Madrid. He was registered as a member on the first day he was born. However, he secretly took a coaching course by himself, and after graduating, he became a glorious trainee coach in the Real Madrid youth training camp. He once said to Gao Shen that his biggest wish now is to coach Real Madrid. Unexpectedly, he is still 108,000 miles away from his wish, but Gao Shen has come true. Martin is crazy, right? His brain is so funny. How could he let you be the coach of Real Madrid? Lucas was full of surprise. Gao Shen silently looked at the familiar and unfamiliar friend in front of him with a "what do you say" expression. No, that's not right. Martin has been the first vice chairman for several years, and he is also a real estate tycoon in Madrid. He runs a number of companies in Spain. He is definitely not a lunatic, and he has no brains. Speaking of which, Lucas snorted again, but why did he choose you to be the Real Madrid coach? Speaking of which, he carefully looked at Gao Shen in front of him. After getting along for more than half a year, he didn't think there was anything special about Gao Shen. Except for being handsome, he was not like him. He was a rookie who just came out of school. Maybe, he thinks that I have the potential to become a famous coach. Gao Shen said lightly. You? Famous coach? Lucas couldn't help laughing out loud. Don't make fun of me. Although you graduated from Loughborough University, a famous sports school, your coaching resume has only less than 7 months of internship. Is even a lot younger than the superstars in the team. You teach them to play football. Gao Shen also thought that this was indeed a very funny thing. I heard that the superstars have already spoken, and they want you to resign immediately. I think you should do it. Don't get involved in the disputes of the first team, and come back to the youth team to continue the internship. Maybe in the future, there will be a chance to become a regular and lead Real Madrid for a few years. For the youth echelon, with enough resume and experience, it is not bad to go out to coach alone. This is a very mature and prudent suggestion, and it is also the path most people take on the road of coaching. Even if some famous stars coach after retirement, they basically follow this route. What if I refuse? Gao Shen asked suddenly. Lucas opened his eyes wide and looked at the profoundness in front of him in disbelief. He felt that today's profoundness was very different. Rejected? You know, how many newspapers, media, and fans will attack you when those superstars make a phone call? If they protest at the Bernabeu tomorrow, the board will be shaken. Do you think the new chairman will change his mind? Even Florentino was forced to resign by them. Do you think they can listen to you? Speaking of this, Lucas stepped forward and stared at Gao Shen with great loyalty. Gao, we are friends. I know that Real Madrid's head coach is the most attractive position in the world, but it doesn't belong to us, at least it doesn't belong to us. Us now. Gao Shen didn't say much from the beginning to the end, but since he entered the door, he has been observing Fernando Lucas. He has only now determined that Lucas is indeed his own, or at least a good friend who really cares about him. Before crossing, he spent many years in a large domestic company, and he was used to seeing various interests and intrigues. He was familiar with it, so he knew how rare it was to have such a friend who sincerely treated him in an environment like Real Madrid. But an opportunity arose, and he had to seize it. Transmigration not only made him the head coach of Real Madrid, but also gave him a gift. There is a mysterious place hidden in the deepest part of his mind. As long as his mind moves, it will emerge clearly. It's a door. Whenever Gao Shen subconsciously wanted to push it open to see what was hidden behind the door, a reminder would always appear in his mind. The tactical library has been activated, and there are still 24 hours before it opens. If there is no accident, this should be the welfare gold finger of the traveler. As you can guess from the name, the tactical library must be related to the tactical knowledge reserve, and it is also the most lacking in Gao Shen at present, which makes Gao Shen feel more confident. Although he had a good time before the crossing, the whole trajectory of his life can be described as bland and unremarkable. Suddenly, he crossed over and became the head coach of the world-renowned Real Madrid. He also has a golden finger, although the situation is worrying. But not necessarily without the opportunity to shine. Besides, he came over from 2021, and he has more football knowledge in the next 15 years than these people now. He knows better than anyone that in the current Real Madrid team, which are the future stars and which are already going downhill, which ones are worthy of reuse and which ones should be eliminated, and he also knows the general trend of the entire tactic in the future. If you have such a huge advantage and don't dare to give it a try, then Gao Shen really deserves to be mediocre all his life. Step back 10,000 steps and say, this is coaching Real Madrid. What a gilded opportunity! Even if he really fails in the end, then he is the former Real Madrid coach. If he puts on this identity, he is afraid that he will not be able to get along. It really doesn't work. Since he is proficient in 2 foreign languages, English and Spanish, can't he eat spicy food when he returns to China? Wealth is sought in danger. Everyone wants to have a bright life, but what is there in this world where there is no loss, no risk, and a huge profit? How can a senior who has been in the workplace for many years still not understand this truth? Noticing that Gao Shen's eyes gradually became firm, Fernando Lucas also realized something. God, are you really going to do it? Gao Shen replied lightly, try it, what if it succeeds? How could it possibly be successful? Fernando Lucas gasped, he really felt that he was too bold. The opposition from all the superstars in the locker room can't scare him? My God, is this still the high profile, low-key and unnoticed before? You really decided? Lucas wanted to confirm again. What Gao Shen got was nodding affirmatively, I want to try it. Fernando Lucas seemed very confused after hearing this, and wanted to persuade him a few more words, but he was very determined. All the superstars have learned the opposite of the acting head coach, so it's no wonder that he succeeds. Even tomorrow, after the news broke, I don't know how many Real Madrid fans will come to Valdebebas to protest. Lucas was anxious like an ant on a hot pan, pacing back and forth over there, sometimes pointing at Gao Shen before saying anything, and sometimes patting his head, as if he was helping Gao Shen study the way out. Finally, the Spanish youth let out a long helpless sigh. Okay, you reading www.yuyuganshu.com if you want to try, then try, but I advise you to prepare for the worst. Maybe when you wake up tomorrow morning, you will be dismissed from get out of class and become a Real Madrid player. The shortest-lived head coach, oh no, the acting head coach. Gao Shen nodded, he knew what. What are you going to do now? Lucas asked with concern. Gao Shen hadn't thought about it for the time being. He had just crossed over, and he wasn't particularly clear about the current situation. Although it wasn't to be smeared, he really didn't have much useful intelligence and information. I want to visit Carlo first. Carlo. Lucas lost his voice in surprise. He found that today's high level had created too many surprises for him. I advise you better not to go, or I'm afraid he won't help but beat you. Gao Shen smiled and nodded, there is indeed such a possibility. Carlo's biggest wish in his life was to coach Real Madrid. He finally looked forward to the stars and the moon, and he has survived until today. As a result, his was taken by Gao Shen before he was hot in the handsome position, and his hands were considered light. Beat it up, you have to go this time. Gao Shen was very determined. Lucas had some incomprehensible ideas, but he vaguely felt that there must be no intentions in this move, so he didn't say much. Well, if Carlo beats you, run away and go home and wait for my news. What do you want to do? Gao Shen was a little surprised. You forgot? Our whole family is a diehard Real Madrid member. I also know a few people at the Bernabeu. I'll go and find out the news for you, and I'll tell you later. After speaking, Lucas bowed to Gao Shen and left. Gao Shen looked at his back, feeling a little warmth in his heart for the first time. This dude is righteous. After Gao Shen came to the Real Madrid youth team, he studied with Carlo, who was the coach of the second team Castillo at the time. Graduated from Loughborough University with a major in sports, even in the Real Madrid youth team, he is considered a rare academic background, but he lacks practical experience. After talking with him a few times, Carlo admired it, and even was transferred to him. After the first team became the head coach of firefighting, he specially brought Gao Shen with him. To a certain extent, Carlo is a profound bull. I just didn't expect that Gao Shen replaced Carlo instead. It was the awkward relationship between the two that caused Gao Shen to be turned away when he came to visit Carlo's home in the Odalisa district. I'm sorry, Gao, he just came back and said he was a little tired and didn't want to see anyone. When Mrs. Carroll spoke, she turned her head to glance at the second floor, and there was a faint shadow behind the curtains of the floor-to-ceiling windows. I see. Gao Shen looked disappointed and let out a long sigh, but his mind had long guessed that this would be the case. If Carlo saw him at this time, Bachin would really beat him. Mrs. Carroll, please help me convey my apology. I'm very, very sorry about this matter. I haven't figured out the situation myself. I don't know what's going on, and I don't know what to do. I'll find a way. Go to the Bernabeu to make it clear and let Mr. Carlo return to the team as soon as possible. Speaking of which, Gao Shen raised his voice, please tell Mr. Carlo that Real Madrid is in a state of uncertainty, and he must not be without him. After speaking, Gao Shen politely said goodbye to Mrs. Carroll and left desperately. Carlo was hiding behind the curtains, watching what happened at the gate of the courtyard, and hearing a few deep words, with a very complicated look on his face. At the age of 43, he had reached the age of no doubt, and he knew that Gao Shen could not be blamed for this matter. If you really want to blame it, you should blame that Chairman Martin, who also vaguely guessed what Martin wanted to do. I just didn't expect that Gao Shen would suddenly be pushed to the cusp of the storm as this unlucky pond fish. Looking at Gao Shen walking around the corner of the road like a walking corpse, Carlo felt some sympathy for him. It is conceivable how embarrassed he must be at this moment to take over such a hot potato at such an inappropriate time. Did you hear that? Mrs. Carroll returned to the second floor, just in time to see her husband standing at the window. Carlo frowned, nodded, walked back to the living room sofa and sat down. This child is probably forced to do nothing. Don't blame him for this. He can't help himself. After speaking, Mrs. Carroll sighed, not only because of her husband's unemployment, but also because of the profound predicament. It's all to blame for that lunatic chairman. With his advanced age and qualifications, let alone a superstar in the Real Madrid locker room, even if he is any player in the first team, it would be strange if he can serve him. How does he act as an acting head coach? Carlo leaned back on the sofa, raised his head, and stared at the ceiling of the house in a daze. After more than 10 minutes, he finally made a decision, picked up his mobile phone and made a call. Hey, it's me. Gao Shen also lives in the Odalisa district. He rented this two-bedroom apartment and asked Carlo for his opinion. I bought some instant noodles for dinner outside, and Gao Shen has been thinking about what he should do next. Carlo didn't see him, which he expected. He's gone today, he'll be there tomorrow, he'll be gone tomorrow, he'll be there the day after, until Karokan sees him. This is a gesture, he just wants everyone to believe that he is being forced to be helpless, that he is also a victim, and even his situation is more miserable than everyone else. Only in this way can he stand upright on the side of justice. The premise of righteousness is to hold righteousness first. If Gao Shen always bears the reputation of occupying the magpie's nest and being ungrateful, who will obey him? As for what he said, he hopes Carlo will return to Real Madrid, which is also his sincere words. It's just that he didn't say when and in what capacity. Taking advantage of the time to boil the instant noodles, Gao Shen took out a blank piece of paper and made a chart for the first team stars. This is his habit of analyzing problems before crossing. The horizontal axis from left to right represents the importance of the player to the club, and the vertical axis from bottom to top represents the player's level of support for him. Then he marked the players in the team one by one. As a result, he found a very sad thing. That is, all the players are in the bottom half, not even close to the horizontal axis. That is to say, among the players in the first team, no matter whether it is important or not, no one supports him. He is now a real, veritable loner. How is this still playing? Gao Shen is a little bit scratchy. Before crossing the road, he worked in big companies for many years, and he has experienced a lot of wind and waves, but he has never encountered such a thorny problem. However, the great leader said that the problem is the contradiction of things, and wherever there is an unresolved contradiction, there is a problem. What Gao Shen has to do now is to grasp the core main contradiction in the Real Madrid locker room: superstar. In fact, this is also a problem that Carlo has always wanted to solve but has not solved since he took office. Otherwise, the former chairman Florentino would not be able to resign because of this, and Martin would not take office hastily. To understand this, Gao Shen's whole person suddenly became enlightened. At this moment, the doorbell rang. As soon as the door opened, Fernando Lucas rushed in. As soon as he saw the instant noodles soaked on the table, this guy was not polite, grabbed it directly, ate it, and kept shouting to starve to death. "I can get myself another drink. Tell me, what do you gain from going to the Bernabeu?" Gao Shen asked with concern while pointing at the instant noodles. Lucas was still concerned about eating noodles at first, but after he managed to kill most of the noodles, he recovered his strength. "It's okay if you don't ask, once you ask, things will be serious." After he finished speaking, he sucked again. Destroy the instant noodles in his hand. Gao Shen was not in a hurry. After making a good meal, he sat down opposite him and waited peacefully. After Lucas had finished eating the last noodle in the cup and sipped a few sips of soup with satisfaction, the young Spanish man noticed the height on the other side, and he couldn't help but have another surprise. Today's lofty depths gave him an unfathomable feeling. If the two hadn't stayed together all day, he would have wondered if Gao Shen had been ripped off. "Tell me," Gao Shen said lightly. Lucas put down the instant noodles in his hand and looked at Gao Shen with a dignified expression. "The superstars have called the Bernabeu, they have no way to directly contact the new chairman Martin, and called the vice-chairman Butragueño, strong protesting the new president's move as an extremely irresponsible decision for Real Madrid, for the players and for the fans." Gao Shen let out a sigh in his heart. This hat is really big enough. Are they planning to give the new chairman a slap in the face? In fact, Gao Shen can understand the feelings of the superstars, because they are too bullying. If nothing else, who can play in Real Madrid, which one is not the world's top star? Is it not a joke to ask a 25-year-old rookie to coach now? Who can be convinced? What is Butragueño's position? Gao Shen asked with concern. Lucas shook his head. "I don't know, it should be appeasement." After a pause, Lucas added, "I guess, Butragueño is a little bit uncertain about the new chairman's idea now." Gao Shen nodded. The emperor and the courtiers have changed, and the chairman has changed. Where will the galactic battleship Real Madrid go next? After the change of chairman, are there any major changes in the various departments of the Bernabeu? Gao Shen asked again. Major personnel change. Lucas shook his head. The biggest change is the dismissal of head coach Carlo in the afternoon, and the other departments are basically the same. Butragueño is the vice-chairman and director of public relations and technology. Director, José Sanchez is still the commerce department, Floro is still the sporting director. I haven't heard of any personnel changes. Gao Shen nodded. A scene already appeared in his mind. If you compare Real Madrid to a company, the performance of the company is very sluggish, and the pressure of public opinion is very high. The top leader decided to step back behind the scenes. Originally, he was idle and had little real power. It's still the one left by the ex. What will he do at this time? Either he accepts this situation and acts as a puppet like he was when he was the second child, or he tries to make a move. If you want to move, you must first test your own power boundaries. The head coach seems to be very important, but in the club's management system, it is actually not that important, because the risk of this position is too great, and it may be blamed at any time, and the typical short life is not thankful. Therefore, many people would rather stay behind the scenes than go to the front desk. For example, the famous AC Milan legend Tassotti has been an assistant coach in AC Milan for nearly 20 years. He has given up several opportunities to coach alone. Let me ask, if Tassotti was the head coach, would he be able to stay in AC Milan for so long? Thinking about it this way, it seems absurd that Martin did this, but there is actually logic behind it. And according to Real Madrid's rules, after Florentino stepped down, Martin became the new chairman, but the presidential election will be held again this summer. If Martin intends to run, there is not much time left for him to prepare. As for changing coaches, Martin must have a head coach he likes. He probably wants to support his own people, but he didn't expect that because Gao Shen suddenly came through, he arranged for Gao Shen to replace him. Lo's location. After thinking about this, the situation in front of Gao Shen became clearer. But Lucas still looked worried, very worried about Gao. I heard at the Bernabeu that Carlos has contacted a number of media and fan organizations. You know, he has played for Real Madrid for many years and is the third captain of the team. The relationship is very tough, you have to be mentally prepared. Lucas let out a long sigh. Real Madrid's presidency is very attractive, but it is also very dangerous. Instead, Gao Shen showed a confident smile. Don't worry, the more violent they are, the safer I will be for the time being. He even wanted to shout, let the cannon fire of the superstars come more violently. The more people discuss and pay attention to him, this is a good thing for Gao Shen. If no one notices him, that is the most dangerous, because Martin can change his mind anytime and anywhere, and one sentence can kill him. But things are different now. When the superstars make trouble, the whole world knows that Real Madrid has changed coaches. Could Martin still be able to do things that change from time to time? But there is not much time left for Gao Shen. Lucas could hear it in a haze. He couldn't figure out why the more the superstars attacked, the safer the high school. But Gao Shen's confident and calm face still surprised Lucas. Does he really have a way to deal with the death situation in front of him? What are you going to do next? Lucas asked with concern. Tomorrow, I'll find a chance to talk to Raul first. Lucas was taken aback. Raul? Team leader? Local gang? Gao Shen's guess was soon confirmed. The next morning, major newspapers in Spain and even in Europe broke the news of Real Madrid's coaching change. The top giant Real Madrid fired the firefighting coach Carlo, who had a good performance in coaching, and hired a 25-year-old intern as the head coach. This is an incredible event in the world. Who is Gao Shen? Not to mention the mainstream media in Europe, even Spain, and even Real Madrid mouthpieces Aspen and Marca, it is difficult to give specific information, only know that he is 25 years old, graduated from Loughborough University, majoring in sports, and came to Real Madrid internship for 7 months. All the media and fans around the world were stunned. Is it crazy that Real Madrid use a 25-year-old fresh graduate as the head coach? I'm afraid this is a plot that you wouldn't even dare to write an online novel, right? As reported that this was the most appalling farce in Real Madrid's history. At the beginning of the century, former Barcelona president Gaspart served as Nunes vice president for many years and was hailed as the best vice president in history. Worst chairman ever. Aspen believes that Martin will become a disgrace in the history of Real Madrid like Gaspart. Marca reported the inside story, believing that Martin's move was a continuation of the infighting of the club's management, and that although Florentino had left, the contradictions he left behind are still disrupting Real Madrid. Martin fired Carlo at this time for only one real purpose, and that was his good friend Vicente Bosque. Marca reported that it was unacceptable for Florentino Bosque to enter Real Madrid. Everyone knows that Bosque was expelled from Real Madrid by Florentino, and now Martin wants his good friends please come back. There will be no support from Florentino in any case. So, he directed such a farce. In an interview with Marca, a core member of Real Madrid's board of directors, the famous Madrid lawyer Ramon Calderon publicly accused Martin of this move, believing that it was an insult to Real Madrid's tradition. The board will never sit idly by and we will investigate and discuss this decision. Club Meritorious Mijatovic also said in an interview with the media that this was a ridiculous decision. As the top giants in the world, the selection of the head coach is never a problem. Almost all the coaches in the world are crazy for this position, but our new chairman has made the worst choice, which is very disappointing. Who is Gao Shen? Did anyone know him before yesterday? It's ridiculous, isn't it? According to media reports, there are even Real Madrid fans who plan to organize fans to protest at Valdebebas and the Bernabeu Stadium, asking the new president to explain the appointment. There are even conspiracy theories that Martin wants this effect. When Gao Shen bought breakfast, he bought 2 newspapers, Aspen and Marca. He has read most of the comments and has a basic understanding of the situation. Especially after seeing Calderon's statement on behalf of the board, he found that the situation became more and more interesting. Before crossing the road, as a fan, he always thought that Calderon had risen suddenly, but now he found out that he is actually a big man. Martin is probably very depressed now, and can't figure out why he made such a decision at that time, right? However, for Gao Shen, the current situation has not changed much. The media ignored him as a nobody at all, and most of the artillery fire was aimed at Martin. But the more this is the case, the more Martin will support Gao Shen. Could it be that he was able to stand up and tell everyone that he chose Gao Shen only because he was so clever? No, if he did that, then he would be really funny. Now he must fight for reasons, claim to support Jace to the outside world, and even show that he is more and more trusting of Jace. Only in this way can he tell everyone that this is not a farce, but his decision after careful consideration. Only in this way can he restore the image of the new chairman to the greatest extent. Next, let's look at the advanced. 5 days later, in the 26th round of La Liga, Real Madrid will face Atletico Madrid at home. This derby in the same city will be a big test. If you pass the test, you can breathe a sigh of relief, but if you don't pass the test, the new chairman will putting on a grief-stricken look. He stood up and slashed Maso with tears, apologized for what he had entrusted to him, and might even have to step on his feet one more time. Isn't this the case with all leaders in ancient and modern China and abroad? Just when Gao Shen finished his breakfast and was on his way to Valdebebas, he suddenly received an unfamiliar phone call. After connecting, it turned out to be Raoul calling. He was still having a headache last night how to contact Raoul, but he did not expect Raoul to come to the door by himself. Gao Shen began to believe that he really seemed to be the hero of an online novel. The reason for Raoul's call was that the new chairman Martin decided to hold a press conference at the Bernabeu in the morning, with both Gao Shen and Captain Raoul to attend, apparently to show the unity of the new Real Madrid to the outside world. The morning training session can only be temporarily handed over to the assistant coach Maqueda. He used to be a Real Madrid player and later became an assistant coach for Carlo. In terms of qualifications, after Carlo was fired, Maqueda should also be the agent. Head coach. About 10 minutes later, Gao Shen rode a bicycle to Valdebebas, when Raoul was already waiting for him in the parking lot. You don't look like you're worried at all. Raoul drove away from Valdebebas. From time to time, he looked sideways at Gao Shen in the passenger seat, and found that his face was as normal and calm, which surprised him. Why didn't he find out that there were still people in the first team coaching staff? Such a person? It's useless to worry, all of this is out of my control. Gao Shen sighed very wronged. Raoul was silent, nodding imperceptibly. Yesterday, Carlo called him, Goody, and some other close people. He heard that after Gao Shen left Valdebebas, he went directly to Carlo's house. Although he didn't see anyone, Carlo was there. He also helped Gao Shen to clarify on the phone. Speaking of which, in this matter, Gao Shen was also an innocent victim, who suffered an inexplicable disaster. God knows what the new chairman wants to do? I was thinking, if it was announced later that I was fired, I would be relieved. Gao Shen pretended to be free and easy with a smile. Raoul turned his head to the side again, glanced at Gao Shen, looked back, and revealed a helpless wry smile. How can things in this world be so easy? Mr. Carroll often mentions you in front of me. Gao Shen suddenly changed the subject. Really? Raoul smiled lightly. He feels very sorry. If so many superstars hadn't been introduced back then, how exciting would the combination of you and Moro be? Gao Shen said with longing. Moro, that is, Morientes, the high center of Real Madrid's youth training, was known as Raul's golden partner at the beginning of the century, but with the superstar strategy, Morientes lost his position in Real Madrid, and even he has eliminated Real Madrid in the Champions League, which is regretted by countless Real Madrid fans. Raul's face changed slightly, but he didn't speak. Gao Shen didn't seem to care, but he had been secretly watching Raul's expression changes. Not enough, we need to add another firewood. Last summer, Carlo left a high center for Castillo, called Alvaro Negredo, 20 years old. Like Moro, he is also 1.86 meters tall and very strong. The two have very similar characteristics and are very capable, but they have never had the opportunity to appear in the first team. Raoul finally showed a hint of regret and sighed, our youth team is not lacking in talents, but there is no ladder for promotion to the first team. Who said it wasn't? Gao Shen immediately followed Raul's words. Abelo, the captain of Castillo, is 23 years old this year, and he is also the captain of the Spanish national youth teams at all levels. Da is only 20 years old, but he has the style of a general, and there are younger wingers Callahan and Juan Mata, midfielders Xavi Garcia and Granero. Especially Parejo, the club's honorary chairman Di Stefano likes to go to the youth team to watch his games, saying that he is the best talent ever cultivated by Real Madrid's youth training. Speaking of this, Gao Shen let out another long sigh. After coaching the first team, Mr. Carlo promoted Soldado and other 2 or 3 people. He has been looking for opportunities to promote more young talents to the first team to try, but he has never been able to do so. Our first team environment. He was hesitant to speak, but Raul's expression changed obviously. Over the years, our youth training players have gone to other La Liga teams, even strong teams like Valencia and Sevilla, aren't they all stable main players? But in their own first team, they are on the contrary. If you can't play football, you have to spend so much money to go outside to bring in superstars, and as a result, the locker room is full of smoke. After complaining, Raoul let out another long sigh. In the locker room, everyone knows the conflict between the local gang and the superstars. Who said it wasn't? Gao Shen continued following Raul's words again. Mr. Carlo told me that he felt that as long as appropriate tactics are created, many youth team players have the ability to play in the first team. I'm thinking, in this situation, what the team needs to rely on is not fame, but whether the player is willing to do his best for the team. If everyone has a lot of calculations in their hearts, and everyone can't work together, how much can they be famous and strong? Instead, it is better to choose some players who are willing to play as hard as they can and are trustworthy. Even if www.uuganshu.com is less famous and weaker, with our strength, we are still competitive in La Liga and the Champions League. At this time, he stopped at a traffic light intersection. Raoul turned his head to look at Gao Shen in disbelief, but found that Gao Shen's face was taken for granted, which aroused hope in his heart that had been extinguished for many years. Do ordinary players have to play worse than superstars? Since Yerra left the team in 2003 to the present, which central defender in Real Madrid can compare to Yerra? Make Leal, Solari, McManaman and a group of lesser-known but superior players left the team one after another, and superstars came in one after another, but Real Madrid's overall performance was getting worse. Raúl doesn't understand these things? No, he understands, but he can't do anything. Even if he is the captain of the team. The light was green, Raúl lightly stepped on the accelerator, and Audi slowly moved forward. Not far away, the outline of the Bernabéu stadium can be vaguely seen. All the coaches understand what you said, but no one dares to do it, including Carlo. Raúl said helplessly. Humans are all about seeking advantages and avoiding disadvantages. Everyone can say the big truth, but doing it is different. Then let me do it. Gao Shen said firmly. You? Yes, I have nothing to worry about. Even this head coach was detained for no reason and may be fired at any time, so there is nothing to worry about. I will go back and promote all the young players who have performed well in the youth team. Come up and train with the first team, and whoever does well in training will play in the derby at the weekend. Raúl's hand gripping the steering wheel visibly trembled, causing him to slam on the brakes instinctively. Are young people so reckless? This is a manuscript specially prepared for you by the Public Relations Department. Just as Gao Shen followed Raúl to the administrative office of the Bernabéu Stadium, sports director Floro greeted him. Floro once coached Real Madrid in 199,394, but he was fired after being exposed by the media because he yelled at the players in the locker room. After that, he went to many teams to coach. Succeeded, but then got the backing of someone on the board to become Real Madrid's sporting director. In the eyes of most fans, the high-end atmosphere and star-studded Real Madrid are different. Real Madrid in reality is actually quite chaotic, and the interior is also full of various entanglements of interests. Take the management system as an example. There is a general manager under the club president, as well as a little-known chairman's office, which is equivalent to the chairman's private think tank, usually helmed by the chairman's most trusted confidant, such as the director of the chairman's office in Florentino. It was Manuel Redondo, his secretary, who had been with him for decades. The general manager is responsible for the day-to-day operations of the club. Below are several different departments, including the sports department, which has a sports director. In theory, the sports director is responsible for all sports affairs, including the basketball department and the football department. When Florentino took over as chairman, the sports director was the former Real Madrid hero Valdano, but then the performance was poor, and Valdano stepped down. Florentino hired world-class coach Sachai. As the technical director, he is directly responsible to the chairman. In this way, the technical director is almost at the same level as the general manager, but since he is only in charge of the football department, many competitive affairs need to be handled by one person, so Floro became the sports director. But soon there was a problem again. Because of the poor performance of the team, the head coach Luis Enberg and the technical director Sachai stepped down, and the technical director was concurrently served by the vice-chairman Butragueño. He was also the head of the Public Relations Department, and he did not have so much energy to worry about it. There were so many things to do, so only the first team was taken, and the second team and the youth team were handed over to Floro, the sports director. This situation only lasted for 3 months. Florentino announced his resignation, and the new chairman Martin took office. So now Real Madrid's internal management is a mess. The team lost 0-1 at home to Arsenal in the first leg of the Champions League, and the second leg at Highbury became crucial. Before that, the weekend derby against Atletico Madrid was also unbeatable, and the league results were also under great pressure. At this time, the new chairman Martin also fired Carlo and appointed Gao Shen, which made everyone even more anxious. At this moment, everyone in the Real Madrid office is thinking about one thing, and that is how to resolve the pressure of public opinion from the outside world. To put it simply, it is to help the new chairman clean his ass. In any case, the new chairman also represents the image and interests of Real Madrid. Therefore, no one would pay any attention to Gao Shen. After Floro handed over the manuscript prepared by the PR department to Gao Shen, he just instructed him, "Don't be nervous when you come to the stage later, just read it according to the manuscript. As for the question and answer session, we have also arranged it." In his opinion, Gao Shen is just a fledgling rookie. No one around paid attention to Gao Shen, and no one from the public relations department even came to tell Gao Shen. Later, he came to the stage, what could be said and what could not be said. Everyone treats him as a tool for reading manuscripts on stage. Gao Shen knew that he was a soft talker and was not taken seriously, but he didn't take it to heart. He took the manuscript to a corner where no one was paying attention, and found that it was all empty talk and nothing dry. With a manuscript of this level, before he crossed over, he would be able to play it on the spot for half an hour without repetition. This is the first time to face the media as Real Madrid head coach. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to speak out. Just reading the manuscript? Joke. Gao Shen tore up the manuscript and threw it directly into the trash can next to it. The press conference attracted many media reporters, but the process was the same as Gao Shen guessed. At the meeting, the new chairman Martin repeatedly emphasized that he chose Gao Shen as the head coach after careful consideration. He said that he had observed Gao Shen for a long time, and he believed that Gao Shen had the ability and courage to lead Real Madrid out of the predicament. He emphasized that Gao Shen graduated from Loughborough University, which is the #1 university in the global sports world. Gao Shen achieved excellent academic performance during his school days, and also performed well in the internship period of Real Madrid. He was promoted to the first team by exception and accumulated experience with the team. This made Gao Shen, who sat upright next to him, feel a little ashamed. He didn't even know that he was so good and so valued by the leaders. Thinking about it, it's still too low-key. This is still to blame for the national football team. It stinks too much, causing the Chinese people to seriously lack confidence in football. All in all, Martin has collected a lot of evidence to prove to everyone that his choice of High-Level is serious, not a so-called farce, and the starting point is that he feels that Real Madrid needs to carry out an impulsive, drastic, and traumatic game. Reform. From 2003 to the present, we haven't won even a single championship, which is unacceptable in any case. Even we are likely to stop in the Champions League round of 16 for 2 consecutive seasons, which is unsatisfactory. We all know that our team is sick, very seriously. Our team needs surgery, a major surgery. Afterwards, Martin bragged about Gao Shentong again, believing that his youth and dynamism are exactly what Real Madrid need most now. After the chairman and technical director Butragueño, Gao Shen also spoke as Real Madrid head coach for the first time. In fact, it's just a memorandum. The whole speech expounded Gao Shen's current Real Madrid status quo and the solutions he envisaged. After Gao Shen finished reciting, the reaction of the on-site media reporters was also very dull. These people are all well informed and play with pens. Do they know if they have any good stuff? After Gao Shen memorized the manuscript, he entered the free questioning session. Don't look at the many people who raised their hands below, but there are obviously routines. For example, the first named is a reporter from Real Madrid TV, one of his own, the second is a reporter from Aspen, who is also his own, and the third is the reporter of the card newspaper is still my own, and the fourth is the reporter of the national newspaper, still my own. The reporters asked serious questions, and the people on the stage answered seriously. Gao Shen was not in a hurry and waited patiently for the opportunity. He believed that with the cunning of the media reporters, they would ask him sooner or later. Sure enough, the subsequent rounds of questions gradually became sharper, and some reporters even directly asked Martin what he said on the board of directors, that more than half of the incompetent players should be fired. But this time Martin was obviously cowardly, and he was sloppy. The media reporter was of course dissatisfied, so he aimed at Gao Shen next to him. Young people are easily impulsive. First, there were 2 frivolous questions in succession, such as how to think about coaching Real Madrid. These are all expected. But soon, trouble came. Gao, I'm a reporter from Catalan Daily Sports. Chairman Mr. Martin said on the board of directors that more than half of Real Madrid's players have failed and should be cleaned out of the team. As the executor of this policy, you have received great expectations from the president and management. How do you plan to implement this policy? How do you lead Real Madrid out of the current predicament? As soon as this question came out, there was an uproar at the scene, and the media reporters in the audience became excited as if they were beaten up. Gao Shen is not a rookie just out of school. How can he not hear the trap in his words? He pretended to ponder, and at the same time secretly turned his head to look at the press officer, who secretly winked and shook his head at him, indicating that he should not answer directly. Even Butragueño on the side smelled something wrong and thought that Gao Shen could not in response to such a scene, for fear that he would say the wrong thing. He wanted to resolve the predicament first. But at this moment, Gao Shen spoke up. Although I only came to Real Madrid for 7 months, I have already deeply felt the history of this club. Gao Shen's opening was quite satisfactory, but the conversation soon changed. I know that the performance of the first team is not ideal, some players even make us doubt whether he is qualified to wear the Real Madrid shirt, and in our youth team, there is a group of very good, very young and dynamic, and at the same time players who are very loyal to the club. I know them and I want to give them more opportunities. Gao Shen's remarks surprised Martin, Butragueño, and others sitting on the podium. This is not the content of the speech. What is he trying to do? Who gave him such reckless courage? But Gao Shen continued. I will use facts to prove that Real Madrid is Real Madrid because of solidarity and the spirit of Juanito, who gave his last breath, not one person or some people in the team. I always insist, in Real Madrid, all players are equal, no one is qualified to be special, no matter who he is. Gao Shen's remarks were so loud that the press conference hall was instantly fried. All the media reporters have read too much information from these short sentences. Is this to declare war on the superstars? Compared with the excitement of the media reporters, the Real Madrid people at the scene, including Raúl, including Butragueño, including Martin, were all stunned. Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com was even a little scared. Can you say such a thing? Can you speak in front of so many media reporters? 6 years. The superstar policy has always been the political correctness of Real Madrid. Now, the head coach of Real Madrid, although he is only acting as an agent, has declared war on the superstars in public. Is this trying to subvert it? If the media reporter just wanted to take a bullet from Gao Shen's mouth before, then Gao Shen now directly dropped a missile, causing everyone to be confused. The new chairman, Martin, was even more shocked. He turned his head to look at Butragueño, as if to ask, how did your PR department do? Didn't you have a good line with him before? Butragueño was also stunned. Gao Shen's sudden move caught them off guard. After feeling the anger of the new chairman, Butragueño turned to look at Floro. What did you tell him? Don't you mean to read according to the manuscript? Why did you say so much out of the script? Floro was also stunned. He didn't expect that Gao Shen would act so boldly and declare war on the superstar in front of so many media reporters. What is he trying to do? Is this kid crazy? When Martin saw the expressions of Butragueño and Floro, he knew it in his heart. Then he looked at Gao Shen, and his eyes became different. Fortunately, this kid was like a stuffy gourd before, and he was pretending to be a pig and eating a tiger, waiting for this opportunity. It's all right now. His remarks directly pierced a hole in the sky. Everything was laid out on the table, and he even kidnapped himself, forcing him to endorse his platform. Don't say anything else. He now comes forward to say that Gao Shen's words were not at his own instigation. Who would believe it? The eagle, who has played all his life, has been pecked by the bird and hurt his eyes. Miscalculated. Martin is definitely not easy. This is what Gao Shen felt after talking with Martin for just 10 minutes after he was in the chairman's office. At the press conference, he was put on a high level, not to mention Martin. Even Butragueño and Floro and others saw the clues, but the new president of Real Madrid was not as everyone guessed. In that way, he got angry at Gao Shen directly, and even fired him on the spot, but instead praised Gao Shen fiercely and gave him enough encouragement and support. When the unknown people met, they must have thought that everything at the press conference was true. This surprised Butragueño and others. Gao Shen is not surprised. He just thinks that this is the mind and courage that a successful person should have. It has already happened. Martin is now in yellow mud and fell off his crotch, and he can't wash it clearly. Even if he fires Gao Shen on the spot, what can he save? Not only could nothing be restored, but instead it damaged his interests and image, so now he can only tie up the high and deep with one heart. If that's the case, why are you angry at Gao Shen? Chairman, please rest assured. After returning, I will immediately start to rectify the team according to your instructions, vigorously promote the youth training players, and let the team reactivate its fighting spirit and form a fighting force as soon as possible. Before saying goodbye, Gao Shen issued a military order to Martin, Butragueño, and others very seriously. I promise, if we can't win Atletico Madrid at home in this weekend's derby match, you will see my resignation letter on your desk after the game. Cold sadness. Martin was so angry that he scolded his mother, "You are too good at pretending?" But when so many people looked at him, he could only put on a moved expression, give encouragement again, and even said that even if he lost this derby in the same city, it would not damage his trust and support for Gao Shen. Of course, Gao Shen also knew that Martin's promise had no weight. On the other hand, Butragueño, Floro, and others on the side paid attention to Gao Shen rather unexpectedly. They never imagined that this nearly 25-year-old fresh graduate was actually a cunning little fox. "You're too bold." On the way back to Valdebebas from the Bernabeu, Raúl shook his head and smiled wryly. But it seemed that his expression was quite happy. In the past few years, superstars have always been the boulders pressing on his heart. It is precisely because of the superstar policy that his status in the locker room has dropped again and again, and his position on the court has been retreated again and again, and he even played as a defensive midfielder. How does this make Raúl, who is a striker and has the reputation of a golden boy, feel in his heart? Gao Shen's remarks were very relieved, but at the same time, they completely exposed the internal contradictions of Real Madrid. He completely offended the superstars to death. This press conference made Raúl look at Gao Shen with admiration, but he thought that Gao Shen was the impulse of a young man, especially in combination with what Gao Shen said on the way to the Bernabeu just now. Raúl is now beginning to believe that Gao Shen really gave up. "You still have to be careful, especially," Raúl reminded. Gao Shen knew it in his heart, and nodded his thanks to Raúl. Actually, they are not monolithic. Raúl was stunned for a moment, and then he understood the profound meaning. They are all superstars and foreign aid, but who said that the interests of so many superstars are the same? By the same token, all local players have the same interests? Don't Raúl, Goody, and the others just not get along with Salgado? The same is true of the superstar groups. The Brazilian team and England players do not necessarily stand together, and Zidane and Gravesen may not necessarily support Carlos and others unconditionally. It was only at this time that Raúl realized that since getting along, every word of the profound point has been pointed directly to the point. With this kind of vision and speaking level, no matter how you look at it, it doesn't look like a young man who just walked out of the school gate. Gao Shen was also observing Raúl, and he clearly felt that Raúl was no longer as hostile to him as he was yesterday. Many people think that doing things depends on relationships, but they don't know that relationships can be created, but to accomplish things, you must reach an agreement on key nodes. Gao Shen has little friendship with the new chairman Martin, but this does not prevent them from sitting down and discussing the future of Real Madrid now. In the same way, Gao Shen and Raúl are also the same. They have many similarities. Realizing this, Raúl will start to try to accept the high level, at least it won't hold back. This is a good start. And Gao Shen also wanted to further deepen Raul's impression of him. After arriving at Valdebebas, Gao Shen did not go to the first team training building with Raul, but went directly to the second team. Time is running out. I will transfer these young players to the first team in the afternoon. Sit down and act, which made Raul's impression of Gao go a step further. When Gao Shen walked through the barbed wire fence of Valdebebas to the training area of the second team, in the faraway Miami, USA, the former president Florentino, who had just abdicated from Real Madrid, booked a seaside manor for vacation here. Wherever he goes, his personal assistant, Manuel Redondo, will follow him. At this time, Redondo hung up the call from Madrid and was reporting to Florentino what had just happened in Madrid. Florentino was lying on a soft beach chair, basking lazily in the warm sun, not to mention how comfortable it was. Although he closed his eyes the whole time, Manuel Redondo still stood beside him, reporting seriously. My old comrade in arms has always been like this. He will suddenly play his wayward cleverness, but he always thought that no one could see through him. This time, even a 25-year-old kid could see through it. Haha. Florentino still closed his eyes and spoke in a calm tone, as if everything that happened in Madrid was under his control, and no one could escape from his five fingers mountain. You know, I have reminded him many times over the years that if he listened to me, the market value of his company would definitely be several times higher than it is now, but he was always so willful, and this time, he thought he did it. Can Bosque and Yera come back? Florentino sneered twice, naive. Then what do we do now? Redondo asked. It's not necessarily a bad thing to let that Chinese kid make a fuss. Some people really should teach me a lesson, otherwise they really think that my favor is for granted. If they don't know how to restrain it, after this season is over, they should be ruthless. Hit hard. Redondo nodded silently, remembering it in his heart. Martin should have regretted his bowels by now. He lived most of his life and was smothered by a 25-year-old hairy boy. The more he got mixed up, the more he went back, but the situation at Real Madrid is not something a child can solve. Yes, Martin still wants to get Bosque back, but he can't do it. Redondo still nodded silently. His gamble is doomed to fail. Florentino said firmly. Bosque's grievances and entanglements with Florentino have been a long story, so much so that Bosque once said a cruel word that if Florentino does not step down, he will never return to Real Madrid. Now that Florentino has stepped down, the new chairman, Martin, happens to be a good friend of Bosque, and the most recent title of Real Madrid was won by Bosque in 2003, so in the board of directors of Real Madrid, let Bosque return voices are high. But Florentino is impossible to accept. Calderon has been a bit conspicuous on the board of directors recently. Redondo reminded lightly. He is also a guy who is unwilling to be lonely. I guess he also wants to test it out to see if he has a chance this summer. Redon nodded. Then should we arrange for someone to talk to him? No, let him go. He can't make a lot of waves. If he wants to come out to elect the chairman, he is not qualified. Florentino obviously dismissed the member of the board of directors. I'm actually interested in that Chinese boy now. Are you sure he's a fresh graduate? Florentino asked curiously. Just graduated last summer, majoring in sports at Loughborough University, UK. It's kind of interesting. He should be the most unexpected surprise in the past day. He has vision, courage, and courage. It's really good. After speaking, Florentino laughed. Redondo was a little surprised. Who is his boss? The leader of the world's top-ranked construction group, who is playing well in both political and business circles, and the master who covers the sky with only one hand in Real Madrid. When have you seen him give such a high evaluation to others? Why don't I arrange for him to meet me when I go back? Florentino waved his hand. No need, he can't last a few days. Hearing his tone, he seemed to have seen the day when Gao Shen was kicked out of Real Madrid. Wow, Gao, you are too courageous. As soon as he came to the training building of the second team to find Fernando Lucas, the Spanish youth gave him a thumbs up. Declaring war on the superstar, this is the first time in 6 years. Lucas laughed. Gao Shen seemed very calm, as if he had just done a trivial thing. What's the reaction in the locker room? It's very strong. Some people are very popular and swearing. Some people are calmer. Some people are working together to study countermeasures. Most people are still waiting and watching. After all, they are very sensitive now. After listening, Gao Shen nodded. After Raoul returned, these people from the local gang should adjust their positions. This can make him breathe a sigh of relief. In fact, what he said at the press conference was like a vote for Raoul and the local gang. According to his original plan, he planned to talk to Raoul in the morning. Who knew that the chairman would hold a press conference temporarily, and even asked him to attend by name. As he happened to be with Raoul, he simply adjusted the plan and staged such a show. The plan can't keep up with the changes. That's how things are done. The most important thing is to control the direction and adapt accordingly. It was Gao Shen's strategy to win over the local gang. First, the local gang was closer to the fans. Second, the Brazilian gang was really unreliable and too self-willed. Third, it was because of the youth training. After making the chart yesterday, Gao Shen carefully made a clear list of which players in the team are worth attracting, which players should be suppressed, and which players need to be appeased. He is in the first team, let alone direct line, he doesn't even have a foundation, and he is soft-spoken. What should I do? The Brazilian gang headed by Carlos was the first to open fire on him, and the opposition was the strongest, but their role in Real Madrid was very prominent. For example, Ronaldo, UU reading www.uuganshu.com. He is now Real Madrid's top scorer, and this is their biggest bargaining chip. How to deal with it? The great leader said that politics is to make few enemies and make more of one's own people. If there is no direct line, no foundation, then find a way to attract a group of people. The Brazilian gang is very important, but it is not the right way. Punishment is impossible, and it is not realistic to sell them, so you can only marginalize them, put pressure on them, and force them take soft. Therefore, Gao Shen decided to promote youth players in their 20s to the first team. Doing so can not only alleviate these two problems, but also cater to the local gang headed by Raoul, killing 3 birds with 1 stone. By the way, Fernando, how is the head coach of the second team, Portugal? Gao Shen asked suddenly. Lucas didn't understand the meaning of Gao Shen, but he was an intern in the second team and was quite familiar with Portugal. Portugal's resume is relatively weak. In 1997, he coached the Real Madrid youth team for 2 years. In 1999, he coached Lolavel Toledo, but his results were poor. At the end of 2003, he coached Cordoba for 2 months, and his results were also very good. Oops, the rest of the time is mostly idle. It wasn't until December last year that the club brought the second team coach Kerala to the first team to put out the fire, and Portugal found the opportunity to return to Castillo to coach. After a pause, Lucas added, he seems to cherish this coaching opportunity very much. Gao Shen nodded lightly, knowing what he knew. If he remembers correctly, Portugal also briefly served as Real Madrid's sporting director during the ensuing turmoil. He made a lot of noise this time. There are more players to be drawn from the second team, and he still needs the cooperation of Portugal. This is a war, and he needs to unite all who can be united. Portugal's hairline is very high, giving people a very wise feeling. When he saw Gao Shen arrive, he was very surprised. The two have dealt with each other, but Gao Shen was just an intern at that time, but now, Gao Shen is the head coach of Real Madrid. Acting? The agent is also the head coach. What surprised him even more was that Gao Shen was quite eloquent. As soon as he met, he complained about how he was helpless in the first team, and what his superiors asked him to do. But now there is no one at hand, what can he do? Michelle, you must know what the new chairman said, right? Gao Shen felt that the heat was almost over, and immediately tried to see it. What? He said a lot. Portugal frowned and thought. That's what he said. He advocated the assessment of Real Madrid's stars, cut the incompetent players in half, and reorganized the locker room. Portugal's eyes flashed with shock, and he looked at Gao Shen in disbelief, who nodded innocently and helplessly. This suddenly reminded Portugal of the long-rumored news. The management is about to get real. In January 2005, Luxembourg replaced Raymond as the head coach of Real Madrid. The purpose was to reorganize the locker room. Before Luxembourg was dismissed from Get Out of Class, there was a remonstrance in the Real Madrid locker room, and the superstars were extremely dissatisfied with his toughness. Florentino used Carlo, and there was news that he was going to suppress the superstar, but he didn't expect that Carlo was so good, and he was another gentleman. So, from the coaching change to the dismissal of the technical director Sachai, the accountability went up step by step, and finally Florentino resigned. But there is also a saying that Florentino could have not resigned, but he couldn't be ruthless with the superstars, so he arranged for Vice-Chairman Martin to take office, just to get rid of those superstars. Because of this, as soon as Martin took office, he shouted that he would cut off half of the incompetent players. In this way, isn't Gao Shen the knife in the hands of the new chairman? Gao Shen didn't know that before, so many things happened to Real Madrid in the past year. At that time, he also saw some news reports in China, but there were not so many details, just a big and vague report, such as Florentino's resignation, such as Rosenberg's dismissal and so on. Portugal thought that everyone knew it, and since these were not secrets, he said all of them. The soul-stirring here is nothing less than the infighting inside the company that I have been to. But Gao Shen was also a little excited in his heart, and he smelled the opportunity keenly. After chatting for more than half an hour, Portugal gave the green light to the dignitaries. He even directly took out the roster of the second team and let Gao Shen choose from it. Castillo has played in the La Liga this season, but his results are not high and he is currently ranked 8th. It is an insurmountable ceiling to move forward. He cannot be upgraded at all, and he does not need to worry about relegation. Portugal is confident and forthright. A handful. Gao Shen also gave him enough face, promising to communicate with him in advance about the players to play. All players who are not included in the first team's playing list can return to the second team to participate in the competition to ensure the second team's game results. Portugal was nothing at first, but looking at Gao Shen's strokes and hooks, the main players under his hands left him one by one, and it was a pain in his heart. Captain Abelo, main centre Negredo, midfielder Del Reed, midfielder Javi Garcia. Every time Gao Shen hits a hook, Portugal's heart twitches. He can only hope that Gao Shen can fulfill his promise, so that these players can return to the second team to participate in the game, otherwise he will fight against the second team with the remaining team. How can he play? Of course, from a system perspective, it is the duty of the second team to unconditionally supply talents for the first team. Gao Shen noticed Portugal's expression and secretly laughed in his heart, but he really had no choice. Real Madrid's youth team is really full of talents, but unfortunately there is no reasonable promotion path to the first team. In addition, the competition in Real Madrid's first team is so fierce, making it difficult for its own youth training talents to gain a foothold in the first team. But now, Gao Shen is really short of manpower. However, Gao Shen soon encountered a problem. There were actually two Callahan in the second team. Juanmi Callahan and Jose Callahan, both 19 years old, born on February 11, 1987, are both right-footed wingers, just one playing on the left and one on the right. Currently both are the main force of the second team. It's true that Gao Shen was a fan in his previous life, but he really didn't pay attention to this detail. Which one is the Callahan in his memory? In the end, there was really no way. Gao Shen waved his hand and both entered the first team. Take people down first, and then slowly distinguish them. This made Portugal's mouth twitch and he almost cried. And Gao Shen noticed another player on the list. Felipe Luis. Gao Shen pointed at the player and looked at Portugal. Brazilian player, born on August 9, 1985, left back. This is the same person Felipe Luis, who has a deep impression on him, later played the world's top left back at Atletico Madrid. But why is he at Real Madrid? Portugal nodded, yes, he is the Brazilian teenager who was loaned by the team from Lentistas. Carlo kept him. He is also the team's main left back this season and has performed well. Gao Shen read Felipe Luis's resume and found that the Brazilian teenager played for Brazil's Figueirense first, and was loaned to Ajax, but failed to stay, so Figueirense sold him to the Uruguayan team Lentistas, which in turn loaned him to Real Madrid. Real Madrid has successively introduced two Uruguayan players, Pablo Garcia and Diogo, but the same agent is actually operating behind them. After Felipe Luis came to Real Madrid, he did not make an appearance in the first team and played directly in the second team, so many fans, including Gao Shen, didn't even know that he had played in Real Madrid. This is definitely a huge surprise. How good is Felipe Luis? At his peak, he was a top left back who could rank among the top 3 in the world. He was both offensive and defensive. From Deportivo to Atletico Madrid, the standard was as good as ever. More importantly, if Gao Shen remembered correctly, he soon became the main force after joining Deportivo, but he broke his leg once in the middle, but even so, he was still affected by Real Madrid and Barcelona and other giant teams. Attention, and later became the top 3 top left backs in the world. It is conceivable that a person with a broken leg can still become a top player in the world. What is the concept? In the first team, Carlos has the strongest opposition to Gao Shen, and Gao Shen has always wanted to use Carlos to make a knife, but Carlos is too important to Real Madrid, not to mention other than Carlos, who can you play left? Raúl Bravo? Or let Ramos make a cameo? Well now, here comes Felipe Luis. Although he is Brazilian, he can relieve his worries. More importantly, this can be a signal. After winning Carlos, whether it is to reuse Raúl Bravo, or let Ramos and Abelão make cameo appearances, this is suppressing the Brazilian gang, and the local gang must have a boost in morale because of this. Is this a good thing? Over the years, the local gang has been under the pressure of the Brazilian gang and the superstars, and the situation is very poor. Even the leader, Raúl, can't play his best striker, and is even forced to play as a midfielder, so they are willing to cooperate with Gao Shen. But once they dominate the locker room, can this kind of cooperation continue? Who can guarantee that they will not become the second Brazilian gang? You know, Raúl, Goody and others have a better relationship with Bosque and Yera than anyone else. People without thought, he must worry about. This seems a little far away, but Gao Shen has to guard against it. From the head coach's standpoint, balance is the best locker room situation. Felipe Luis is a very suitable entry point, telling everyone that Gao Shen does not care about any local gang, superstars and Brazilian gangs, as long as he is willing to play for Real Madrid, as long as he can cooperate with him, he is welcome. Thinking of this, Gao Shen ticked the name of Felipe Luis without hesitation. If Abelão, Negredo, De La Reed, and others were expected, then Felipe Luis was a great surprise. Later, Gao Shen hooked 3 players, Granero, Parejo, and Juan Mata. He originally planned to hook young players such as Bueno. Anyway, he is not afraid of many people now, but after seeing Portugal after the resentful look in his eyes, he resisted the urge. Even so, he directly took away half of Portugal's main players and some important substitute players, which made the Castillo coach feel like being cut into flesh. This kid from China is really cruel. When you come, you will be alone, and when you return, you will be a group of people. Not only was there a dozen or so second-team teenagers behind him, but Gao Shen simply poached the intern Fernando Lucas. Nowadays, the coaching staff of the first team are all from Carlos, and the assistant coach is Maqueda. He is older than Gao Shen, and Gao Shen also has to defend himself. It is better to have a trusted person by his side. A group of people marched through the barbed wire and entered the training area of the first team. The young generals were very surprised when they received the notice, Yu reading www.yuuganshu.com. Some of them are about the same age as Gao Shen, and they have dealt with them before, but I didn't expect that now Gao Shen has transformed into the first team head coach, and they have been transferred to the first team, realizing their dreams for many years, which makes how can the teenagers not get excited? What boy doesn't look forward to a bright future? They crossed this barbed wire, who would want to go back again? And Gao Shen made such a big noise, and the first team also quickly received the news. The coaching staff didn't receive the notification before, but now Gao Shen brought people over directly, which caught them a little by surprise. The players were even more shocked. You know, when Carlo was coaching the first team, he promoted several young players from the second team. As a result, there are now a total of 32 players in the first team training with the team, including 4 goalkeepers. Today, Gao Shen brought a dozen players, and the total number of the first team immediately soared to over 40. God, this is definitely the biggest and bloated first team squad Real Madrid has ever had. What exactly does he want to do? Did the board really allow him to act like this? Doesn't he understand the truth that soldiers are more valuable than elites? Raúl, Goody, Casillas, Ramos, and others stood by, silently watching what was happening outside the window. I thought I was brave enough, but I didn't expect him to be more outrageous than me. Ramos laughed. Goody also nodded cheerfully, I'm starting to like him a little too. Raúl and Casillas are both cautious and cautious. At this moment, it is hard to hide their surprise and joy, but at the same time they are also a little more worried. Can things really go so smoothly? You say, is he stupid? Ronaldo sneered. In the players' rest area, Ronaldo, Carlos, Baptista, Chichinho, and others gathered together, looking coldly at the mighty crowd passing by outside the window. All of them had a strange feeling in their hearts. This is too outrageous, isn't it? The first team was already overcrowded, but now there are more than a dozen people all of a sudden. What is he trying to do? Doesn't he know that no matter how many players there are in the first team, there can only be 11 players in the game? I don't think he's stupid, he's stupid. Carlos replied coldly, I don't even know if he was sold, and he helped people with money. Regarding the press conference in the morning, Raúl didn't reveal anything after he came back. Most of the players in the locker room basically believed that the high-level remarks were inspired by the management, especially the new chairman Martin. Because Martin has said something similar on the board before. In Carlos' view, Gao Shen is a knife that Martin holds in his hand. But does this knife really work? Could it be that he wants to rely on these dozen or so brats to win the weekend derby in the same city? Atletico Madrid's league ranking this season is not ideal. The famous coach Bianchi was dismissed in January, and Atletico Madrid's second-team coach Pepe Murcia put out the fire. The league ranking has rebounded, and the overall ranking is in the standings area. The Sheet Legion not only gathered a group of local Spanish internationals and famous players such as Fernando Torres, Pablo Ibanez, Antonio Lopez, Mario Suarez, and Gabi, but also like Lucen, Ibega S.A., Petrov, Maxi Rodriguez, Galletti, Koeman and other powerful foreign aid. The overall strength should not be underestimated. It is precisely because Atletico Madrid is not weak, that they were able to win 21 at home and 31 away, double killing the league leader Barcelona. In the first match of the season, Real Madrid defeated Atletico Madrid 30 away, but the process was very dangerous. In the end, it was only with Ronaldo's brace and Atletico Madrid's own goal from the central defender. Retreat. Now, with the passage of time, Real Madrid is no longer the time when Rosenberg was coached, and the internal atmosphere of Real Madrid is harmonious. Atletico Madrid's situation has also improved after the coaching change. And when Gao Shen was facing an opponent like Atletico Madrid, he promoted more than a dozen players from the youth team in one breath. Do you really want to use the superstars? Does he really think that he can rely on those to compete in the league and the Champions League? Carlos sneered with disdain. He felt that Gao Shen was too naive and ignorant. But it's normal, young people, ignorant people are fearless. Gao Shen didn't know what happened in the players' rest area, but he guessed that the minds of the stars would be very complicated. But none of this was his concern. After handing the player over to Captain Raul, Gao Shen went straight to the coach's office. Before that, he rejected the club's arrangement and did not move into the head coach's office where Rosenberg and Carlo worked, but continued to choose to work in the coach's office, still in his own position. This is also an attitude. But when facing Maqueda, Gao Shen pretended to be helpless and smiled bitterly. Maybe I'll be dismissed from get out of class tomorrow, and I'll have to move back when I can. Maqueda said something nice and obedient without smiling, but he didn't force it. Obviously, he also thought that Gao Shen was not qualified to move into that office. Even, he himself is more qualified than Gao Shen. Gao, you have promoted so many young players from the second team all at once. How are you going to arrange the training session in the afternoon? Maqueda asked. Others don't know, you don't know me yet? What arrangements can I make? I will do what the leaders above say. I will do it. Learn right there. Although Gao Shen said it politely, a trace of contempt flashed in Maqueda's eyes after hearing it. As expected, he is a fledgling rookie who knows nothing and understands nothing. Why should he be the head coach of Real Madrid? Okay, I'll make arrangements. After speaking, Maqueda went out without looking back. Hey, isn't this old boy too rude? Fernando Lucas next to Gao Shen was unhappy. He had been listening from the beginning to the end. If it wasn't for Gao Shen's gesture to stop him, he would have come forward and said a few words to Maqueda. You're polite. Gao Shen didn't think he was embarrassed, looked at Lucas and smiled. If you have strength, others will be polite to you. If you don't have strength, why should you ask others to respect you? This was the case when I was in the workplace, and it is still the same now when I coach Real Madrid. Then how do you establish the prestige of the head coach? Lucas asked worriedly. Gao Shen smiled and shook his head. This is actually an illusion of many people. Whether it is the head coach or the leader of the company, where does the prestige come from? Job? Players and subordinates are in conflict with each other, and it is not too much to even do away with coaches and leaders. Many leaders have just arrived and are eager to express themselves and want to establish their prestige as soon as possible, advocating the so-called 3 fires of new officials taking office. It can be said that most of the leaders who set fire to prestige will not end well. Gao Shen is not stupid. He promoted more than a dozen players from the second team in one go, which in itself was enough. At this time, if he blindly ignited fire everywhere, the final result was that he was completely finished. It's like the young coach Boaz, who will be coaching Chelsea in a few years. As soon as he took office, he threatened to win the 3 locker room bosses of Lampard, Terry, and Drogba, and to implement youthful reforms. Thoroughly angered the 3, and chaos broke out in the locker room. But it wasn't this that really caused his tragedy. With Boaz's status at the time, although he was not heavy enough, he was also valued by the Chelsea management. If he gritted his teeth and carried it to the end, after winning the 3 veterans, he brought the team's results up, then he would win. The worst thing is, he can't take it. What's more terrible is that after the rapid decline in performance, he had to re-enable these 3 veterans, but the 3 veterans all held back their strength and performed very well, which made Boaz in the locker room, or in the public opinion circle, all prestige has been lost. At this time, Boaz actually still had a chance, that is, to find the three of them as soon as possible to reconcile and make up the relationship, but he didn't, so the final result was that the locker room was completely alienated from him, and he himself went out of class in despair. What does this case show? When a new official takes office, don't blindly ignite the fire. First, you must understand the situation clearly, and secondly, you must have a clear and definite way of thinking. For example, what tactics will Real Madrid adopt now? Under the circumstance of ensuring the team's combat effectiveness, who can use it? Who can't use it? Even if it is a superstar, what needs to be appeased and recruited? Which ones must be given color? If Gao Shen made a lot of in front of the players today, but tomorrow he has to flatter and make compromises for the sake of his performance, where is his prestige? In an enterprise, improving performance is the last word. In a football team, it is the last word to be able to lead the team to score and win. The most important thing for Gao Shen now is to have a clear set of team formation ideas, that is, to determine which tactics are most suitable for Real Madrid. Only after this point is clarified, and then use this as a basis to select players, and then communicate with each other one by one. Appease. As for the team's problem and the next tactical play, Gao Shen already has a rough idea, but it still needs to be improved continuously. Tonight is the opening time of the tactics library. Gao Shen has a very strong feeling that many of his current questions will be answered in this library. He is also looking forward to it. What kind of help can the traveler's golden finger bring to him? When all the players watched Gao Shen bring more than a dozen young players from the second team, they were mentally prepared for the three fires when the new officer took office in the afternoon training session, and even Raoul reminded several local players need to pay attention to what they say. What surprised everyone was that the 90-minute training sessions were all presided over by assistant coach Maqueda. The position is rarely adjusted, just like a wooden stake. Oh, no, maybe it's more like a humanoid monitor. This made a lot of people miscalculate, and many people were thinking about it, wanting to watch a high-level good show, and when they moved the bench and bought the seeds and peanuts, they were told not to act. This is too unsightly. Not only did he not play the role of the new official, but even after the training session, Gao Shen did not stay in the training ground. He was the first to turn around and left, and then he did not impatiently go to talk to the players as many people expected. Instead, he returned to the office to pack up and left Valdebebas. As soon as the players were about to return to the locker room, they saw the back of Gao Shen leaving, and they were all puzzled. Is there such a head coach? Really don't even want to pretend? What the is this kid doing? Is he the head coach like this? Isn't it irresponsible? Salgado was annoyed. Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com. He also has some weight in the locker room, after all, he has played for the team for many years. It is estimated that the jar has been broken, and I know I won't stay long. Carlos sneered sarcastically. The other players also burst into laughter. Let Gao Shen be Real Madrid's head coach. Guti, Ramos, Casillas, and others were also surprised and puzzled, and even a little annoyed. Thankfully, Raoul had passed them on before, saying that he wanted to cooperate with the head coach, but what happened? The head coach didn't do anything, didn't say anything, how could they cooperate? Raoul was also at a loss, especially after seeing Guti and others' questioning eyes. The Real Madrid captain also shook his head. Although he had been in contact with him twice, the feeling that Gao Shen gave him was definitely not the way he is now, and now he is completely unpredictable about what Gao Shen is thinking and what he wants to do next. There are more than 40 people in the first team, so we always have to polish up a lineup for the weekend derby, right? Fernando. Raoul saw Lucas coming, and immediately called out to him. Raoul is Lucas' idol. The Madrid native ran over happily immediately. Where is he in a hurry to go? Raoul asked with concern. Following Raoul's line of sight, Lucas guessed that he was asking Gao Shen, and immediately replied, he said, he has something to go to Mr. Carroll's house. Everyone suddenly realized. It turned out that he went to find Carlo to learn from the scriptures. But the question is Carlo willing to see him? I'm sorry, Gao, he's not at home. It was still at the door of Carlo's house in Odaleza district. Just like yesterday, Gao Shen was still turned away. He was not surprised, but he deliberately showed a hint of loss, and asked a few questions, such as whether Carlo's mood was calm, and whether he watched today's news and so on. Gao Shen specifically explained that before today's press conference, the management gave him a speech and asked him to follow it. Mrs. Carroll showed an expression that was not what I expected. When they saw the news, Carlo still had some doubts, but Mrs. Carlo insisted that Gao Shen didn't look like someone who could say something like this. Someone must have made him say that on purpose. Now, Gao Shen has solved the mystery himself. The manuscript was indeed given by the leader, and he read it accordingly. It's just. He played a few words on the spot. Mrs. Carroll, please tell Mr. I really want to apologize to him in person, and also ask him to give me a little more time. I will definitely find a way to solve this matter as soon as possible. After speaking, Gao Shen said goodbye to Mrs. Carroll politely and turned away. Mrs. Carroll watched the back of Gao Shen's departure, and no matter how she looked at it, she tasted a miserable sense of sadness. This unfortunate child is about the same age as their children, but now he is in such a predicament, how innocent. Back on the second floor, she saw Carlo returning from the window to the living room sofa to sit down. Mrs. Carlo told everything just now, and finally let out a long sigh, feeling incomparable sympathy for Gao Shen. Carlo is not surprised either, because in his impression, Gao Shen doesn't seem to be a character who can say such things. I think, when he comes back tomorrow, you can meet him and have a good chat. Mrs. Carroll felt the profound sincerity. Carlo didn't react, just frowned and thought hard for a while. He felt that Martin must have a plan. Gao Shen is now like a knife in Martin's hands that slashes at a superstar. No one in the professional football circle knows that the head coach is a natural bearer. Once a problem occurs in many teams, the responsibility of the leadership, the responsibility of the players, no matter who is responsible, as long as the results are not satisfactory, the head coach will be the first to take the blame. Martin and Bosk are very good friends. Now let Gao Shen do this to muddy the water. Next, let Bosk come out to clean up the mess. Yera may also return, so that he will have a better chance in the summer presidential election. And even get rid of behind-the-scenes manipulation. When Carlo analyzed this, he looked at his wife and shook his head helplessly. These open and secret battles from the management are too far away from us, and we can't change them. If he comes again tomorrow, tell him and resign quickly. Don't get involved, otherwise, I'm afraid it will be difficult to stay at Real Madrid in the future. Is it that serious? Mrs. Carroll asked worriedly. As soon as this weekend, after playing Atletico Madrid, if the results are not satisfactory, Martin will stand up and fire Gao Shen, and everything will be pushed on him, and Florentino, don't look at him retire, it will affect the power is still amazing, and there are even many people on the board of directors. In the eyes of many fans, Real Madrid is a football team and a wealthy family, but only after getting close to Real Madrid can they know that it is no longer a football team, but Madrid, and even the Vanity Fair where the political and business celebrities of Spain gather. Not to mention anything else, members of the Spanish royal family, prime ministers, and government officials often come to see Real Madrid matches. And where do people of this level often appear? What if he wins Atletico? Mrs. Caro asked curiously. Defeat Atletico Madrid. Carlo smiled wryly and shook his head. How is this possible? Without the support of the superstars, Real Madrid would not be able to win Atletico Madrid. Even if he is still in office, he is not sure about the current Atletico Madrid, let alone advanced. And after defeating Atletico Madrid, there are more powerful Arsenal and Barcelona. This is destined to be a dead end. Gao Shen returned to the rented house, made a cup of instant noodles, and made a list. The list is mainly based on the spool chart he drew yesterday. Some of the thorns in it that are strongly opposed but have a very obvious effect on the team are listed, such as Carlos and Ronaldo, and some are also crucial to the team. Important, but unspoken, like Zidane and Beckham. Raul was listed as a temporary neutral by Gao Shen. He believed that after today's contact, Raul will cooperate with him, but the premise is that he must come up with dry goods as soon as possible, so that Raul believes that he can solve the current problems of Real Madrid. Gao Shen has been in the company for so many years and has the deepest memory. One of the leaders who had the greatest influence on him once said 2 words to him. Whether it is on the battlefield or in the market, winning a battle is the foundation and guarantee for motivating morale and uniting the team. You must be good at and dare to fight, look for opportunities in the struggle, and establish your prestige and status in the struggle. How to fight? It is to make more of one's own people and less of the enemy. Who should unite? Who should try to isolate? Who can win over? Who must fight resolutely? In this list, Gao Shen has very clearly labeled everyone in the Real Madrid first team, but in the list of resolute struggles, he has only filled in one name for the time being, Brazil gang. Carlos threatens him in public, which is unbearable. Ronaldo, Baptista, Robinho, Chichinho and others are too tight together, and these players are too willful, which is unbearable. If it is an ordinary fan, Gao Shen is a fan of Ronaldo and also likes Carlos, but now, they are rivals. What are the attitudes of Zidane and Beckham, as well as some other players whose positions are vague? Gao Shen placed a big question mark. However, Gao Shen's practice today has already started the first step in the reform of the first team. Irrigation in large quantities and bringing in more youth training players who are at least neutral, although they are not my own, are themselves the goals that Jason wants to achieve. Next, he needs to find a suitable set of tactics for the team as soon as possible and start selecting players. Thinking of this, Takasuka ate the softened instant noodles and directly entered the tactical library. Gao Shen finally pushed open the door and walked into the tactics library. The feeling of passing through that door is like walking out of the player tunnel and entering the stadium of 100,000 people, which is full of people. The library is just like its name, with endless rows of bookshelves, neatly arranged with a variety of books, from theory to practice, from youth training to sports rehabilitation, from player psychology to locker rooms management, all kinds of football-related books, you can find everything here. While stunned, Gao Shen strolled through the layers of books, feeling very puzzled. Is that all? Aren't the golden fingers of the traversers very leathery? How did it change to me? Although knowledge can change one's destiny, one has to learn from scratch after transmigration. Isn't this a slap in the face of transmigrators? Just when Gao deeply suspected that he might be the saddest traveler in history, he took a book from the bookshelf, and he immediately discovered that the books in this library were different. The books on this shelf are not books in the real world, but the author's experience, wisdom, and various detailed operation cases. For example, the book that Gao Shen holds in his hand is his favorite Ferguson book, which belongs to the Ferguson series. The focus of this book is on Ferguson's management, from the first day of his coaching, from the Soviet Super League to Manchester United, from the fledgling to the current stomping that can shake European football. It tells in great detail about Ferguson and all kinds of clubs. Managers, agents, and players deal with all kinds of emergencies. The latest in the book is about Ruud van Nistelrooy, Ferguson's decision to sell the Dutch centre. Ruud van Nistelrooy has a long history of problems. He is very dissatisfied with the playing style of Portuguese teenager Cristiano Ronaldo. This is normal. The characteristics of the two do not complement each other. When Ronaldo lost his father last year, the two even almost fought in the training ground. Ferguson ignored it at first, but gradually Ruud van Nistelrooy shifted his anger to other Manchester United players, including Gary Neville, because they were on Ronaldo's side during the conflict, which was problematic. In the book, it elaborates on Ferguson's various trade-offs, as well as Ferguson's negotiations with the Ruud van Nistelrooy team, as well as his preparations to operate in the transfer market, all of which are preparing for the departure of Ruud this summer. Gao Shen had never seen a manipulation of a top famous coach so closely before, which made him amazed, and at the same time, he was deeply amazed by the mystery of this library. Reading www.yuyuganshu.com. These contents in the book are not to be said to be outsiders. It is estimated that many of Ferguson's memories are blurred, and they are the memories hidden in the deepest part of his mind. In addition to management, there are also tactical ideas about Ferguson. In the book, since Ferguson was a player, he explained the changes in his tactical concept bit by bit, and how he constantly updated his tactical concept through learning to build Manchester United into the top team in Europe. In addition to management and tactical concepts, there are also on-the-spot command and daily training, as well as other aspects. Not only Ferguson, but also other famous coaches and head coaches, and even more distant Beckenbauer, Michels, etc., have everything, and the collection is extremely rich. After walking around, Gao Shen deeply realized that the collection of books in this library is actually a collection of the coaching experience and tactical experience of many world football coaches throughout the ages, which is the most precious thing hidden in their minds. Wealth is absolutely priceless. And this is what Jason needs most now. Before he crossed over, he was just an ordinary fan. Although he had more than 15 years of knowledge and vision, he still lacked the professional ability of a head coach, and the collection of books in the library could greatly make up for his weakness in this regard. These collections are a bit like the famous marshals who took out the things in their minds and let them read them without reservation. This is more rare than teaching them by hand. However, although the collection of books is rich, what Gao Shen is facing is an imminent problem. In this vast library, he must choose a book that is most suitable for him at the moment, and then formulate the most suitable tactical system for Real Madrid. In fact, Gao Shen already had the answer in his heart. The history of football tactics is like a tragic history in which the back waves continue to beat the front waves to death. The old innovators slowly became the mainstream and were replaced by a new round of innovators, which in turn promoted the development of football tactics. At the turn of the century, many fans will remember the madness of the Bundesliga, Florentino's Galaxy Battleship, Manchester United's Iron Blood Triple Crown, and the afterglow of the Serie A World Cup. But few fans will remember that there was once a small team that was not so conspicuous, which reached the Champions League final for 2 consecutive seasons. Although they all lost to giants in the end and became synonymous with tragic reminders, this team is undoubtedly the most impressive in the past few years at the turn of the century, and it also plays the role of a tactical innovator in European football. This team is from La Liga, called Valencia. From Italian coach Ranieri to coach Valencia, he brought the Italian defensive system framework to the team, and then the Argentine coach Hector Cooper took Valencia's achievements further. Many fans remember Cooper because of his coaching at Inter Milan, especially the grudge between him and Ronaldo. Conservative, stubborn, and impersonal, this should be the stereotype of Cooper for all fans. Even when Gao Shen searched for Cooper on the internet before, a photo of an old-fashioned image with white hair, a black frame, and an extremely stubborn expression would always pop up, which undoubtedly deepened the understanding of Cooper for later generations. But in fact, whether coaching Real Mallorca or Valencia, Cooper is a veritable tactical innovator. On the basis of Agnelli, he created a 4-4-2 midfield diamond-shaped stance for Valencia, which greatly stimulated the tactical development of European football. Field. Cooper's play style not only helped Valencia reach the Champions League final for 2 consecutive seasons, but also cultivated a group of outstanding players, such as Gerrard, Mendieta, and so on. With this idea, he himself won the favor of Inter Milan president Moratti, which is why he later had a grudge with Ronaldo. So Cooper's tactical innovation is just an adjustment of the player's position? It seems to be true for ordinary fans, but in fact, this is a revolution in tactical concepts. It represents a big step in European football from the original free and man-to-man tactics to the concept of zone defense outlined by Sachai. Step forward. In the past, football tactics emphasized the possession of the ball and people, but now a third element has been added, which is space. In the state of possession, how to expand the space as much as possible, mobilize the opponent's defense, and create more space for the offense. In the state of defense, how to compress the space as much as possible, maintain a tight defensive formation, and reduce the exposure of one's own space. As a single defensive midfielder, Gerrard grew up under Cooper's system and was favored by Barcelona. He was introduced at a sky-high price. Unexpectedly, he was lost in the confusion of Camp Nou. Mendieta also moved to Lazio later, and he experienced great discomfort, and his career plummeted. This is definitely not a coincidence. If it is said that Cooper has been leading the European tactical revolution during his coaching in Valencia, then his successor, Benitez, has taken this set of innovations a step further and promoted it into a consensus across Europe and even the world. 4231, double midfielder, presses and presses from a high position. Benitez clearly saw that the single-back midfielder in the 4-4-2 diamond-shaped stance was not enough to protect the space between the two ribs of the back line. At that time, there were many European football players like Zidane and Ned. For a midfielder like Vader, they have a strong ability to attack the ribs. So, he removed a striker and adopted a double midfielder play. After Valencia sold Gerrard, he introduced Barraja, plus the team's training of Albalda, just for Benny. Tez formed a set of the most classic double midfielder combination in European football in the past decade. With 4 lines, the control of space has reached a new height. You can attack in front and defend in retreat. Benitez used this style of play to lead Valencia to the La Liga title and Liverpool to perform the Istanbul Miracle in the Champions League final. Even next year, in 2007, Liverpool will reach the Champions League final. It can be said that the 4-2-3-1 style of play is very advanced at the moment. From the perspective of 2006, the 4-3-3 that Chelsea coach Jose Mourinho is now using is very advanced, but the requirements for players are very high, and it is not suitable for most teams at all. Generally, only strong teams are using them. 4-2-3-1 is different, its universality is very strong. At least, the current Real Madrid can't play 4-3 or 3. Once upon a time, Real Madrid also wanted to play with a double midfielder. No matter if it was Florentino who brought in Lille, Flavio and Celades in one breath, the back three who performed very well in La Liga, or the later Grafson and Pablo Garcia, famous players and other players have proved that Real Madrid can't see the trend clearly. So why is Real Madrid's defense still so bad? The answer is simple: superstars. So the question is, why does the superstar have such a great influence on Real Madrid's tactics? Just because the superstars aren't actively involved in defense? Yes, but also not. It is now 2006, and the World Cup in Germany is coming soon. I believe many fans will have a question: why did Zidane perform so well in the World Cup in Germany, but not so well in Real Madrid? Did he deliberately keep his strength in the club? I am afraid that only Zidane knows whether he has deliberately reserved his strength. However, Zidane plays a completely different role in Real Madrid and in the French national team. In the World Cup in Germany, France adopted a 4-2-3 formation with Lille and Vieira in the lower back. Zidane did not play on the left side of the front court, but as a front midfielder. The formation of 4231 is very balanced, especially it can stimulate the role of the attacking midfielder. Zidane can be described as a duck to water in this tactical system, and even he does not need to worry about defense at all, because there are 2 defending midfielders behind him. It can be said that in this set of play, Zidane's strength was brought into full play. Can Real Madrid play? Comparing France's lineup in the World Cup, the striker is Ronaldo vs. Henry, the left is Raúl vs. Malauda, and the right is Robinho vs. Ribéry. It doesn't seem like it's incomparable, right? Even in the midfield position, Gravesen is a famous player in the Premier League, Pablo Garcia is a famous player in La Liga, and there is a long passer Beckham who plays very well in the midfield. You can try it no matter what. Then why didn't Real Madrid try? The answer is very simple, still a superstar. First of all, Ronaldo's range of activities and personal ability are not as good as those of the past, and he can't play Henry's threat at all. Secondly, Robert Carlos loves attacking, and is best at on-stop on the wing, and everyone knows that he wants to let Carlos play threat, then the front court has to leave space for him. Then the problem comes. When Carlos moves forward, the players on the left side of the front court will close in the middle, which will seize the range of activities of the attacking midfielder. If it is only like this, it will be fine. The attack after the insertion was unfavorable, and the opponent counterattacked. Real Madrid's defense is difficult to organize an effective defense system. Because Real Madrid is still playing the old way of zone marking, the defense emphasizes the individual performance of the players more than the team's system battle, because Carlos can't come back, because Ronaldo, Zidane and Robinho and other superstars are not active back defense. If one or two do not return to defense, the team still has a way to make up for it, but if the front court players do not return to defense, how can they make up for it? Therefore, in the past few years, Real Madrid's defense can be described as riddled with holes. Even if the defenders change one after another, and the defenders who are behind the midfield are bought one after another, the effect is still the same, and there is no effect at all. The defensive system does not change, the overall tactical concept does not change, and it is useless to change anyone. Gao Shen is very aware of the problems Real Madrid is facing now. Before crossing, he was a fan. He only knew that the problem was with the superstar, but why was it a superstar? He doesn't understand. Now, he understands a little bit, so he's going to start working on it. He chose to watch Benitez's series of books, first of all about Benitez's tactics and team formation, especially the improvement after taking over Valencia and the transformation after taking over Liverpool, which are very valuable to the current high school. When Gao Shen watched the two major cases in the library overnight and chewed it over and over again, although there were still many things he didn't understand, his tactical attainments had reached a new level, and he could see Real Madrid's current problems more clearly. Real Madrid is ill and terminally ill. This kind of situation can no longer be cured by taking medicine and injections. Reading www.uuganshu.com but to a major surgery. Especially in defense, the entire defensive system must be innovated. If the defensive system is not innovated, it will be useless to introduce more superstars. From Samuel to Woodgate, and the next world footballer Cannavaro, he even hired the famous conservative Italian coach Capello, which improved Real Madrid's defense and won the league champion, but still not stable enough. And Capello's success in Real Madrid is precisely because he adopted a double midfielder. This is exactly what Gao Shen wanted to do. Real Madrid's problem has never been attacking, but defending. Or in other words, how to better organize defense while ensuring offensive threats. Real Madrid is also not short of good players. Like Grafson, he is the core of Everton's midfield. Many people think he is a reckless man. Yes, he looks very fierce, but in fact, he has many strong players. Passing and playmaking skills. Pablo Garcia is also a famous La Liga player. His ability to be seen by Real Madrid is a testament to his strength. What Gao Shen needs to do now is to formulate a suitable set of tactics to integrate this group of players to form combat effectiveness. 4231 is the tactic that Gao Shen wants. He believes that this is also the most suitable tactic for Real Madrid at the moment. Although this will sacrifice part of the attacking power, it can be exchanged for a solid defense, which will make Real Madrid more competitive. What's more, since Gao Shen has decided to fight with the superstars led by the Brazilian gang, the team's offense will be affected no matter what, so it is better to take the initiative to weaken the offense and strengthen the defense. After deciding on the tactics, the next step is the selection of the lineup. In Real Madrid's 423 formation, the best position to be sure is the goalkeeper, and Casillas is the best choice. San Cassi's reputation will hang in Real Madrid for at least a few years, which shows his strength. Judging from the statistics of this season, Casillas is undoubtedly one of the best players in Real Madrid right now. Real Madrid's goalkeeper has the world's top reflexes and incredible saves. Unfortunately, he is limited by his height, which makes him unstable in handling high balls, but this does not damage Casillas' status as the world's top goalkeeper. This state of Saint Cassi will be maintained until he is older and his physical function declines, which leads to a decline in his ability to respond. Only at this time does he begin to expose more weaknesses and deficiencies. But this is already 10 or 8 years later. In terms of right back, Real Madrid has a total of 5 players, namely Salgado, Chichinho, Diogo, Ramos, and Abeló, a teenager who was promoted from the second team. Needless to say, Ramos, Gao Shen positioned him as a central defender. Among the remaining 4, Salgado is a bit old, and Chichinho is slightly stronger than Salgado. A member of the Brazilian gang, Diogo is the worst, and his future achievements are relatively low. Gao Shen decided to reuse Abeló in this position. Don't look at Abeló, who is not well known now. He has been in the second team. At the age of 23, he is not welcomed by the first team, but his strength is not weak. He is not only the captain of Real Madrid's second team, but also the Spanish national youth team captain. If Gao Shen remembers correctly, Abeló moved from Real Madrid to Deportivo in the summer of 2006. After only half a season, he was bought by Liverpool for 3 times the price of the Premier League. Freeze Messi and become famous. It can be seen that Abeló's current strength is definitely not bad, he just lacks the opportunity to perform. Sometimes, wealthy families and big companies are like this. They do not lack talents, but lack the soil to reuse talents. The same thing happened on the left. Carlos is almost 33 years old, and his state has already declined significantly. His left side has always been the hardest hit area for Real Madrid's defense, as is the left-back substitute Raúl Bravo. The left side of the two performed well. Are very unstable. Under Carlo, Raúl Bravo is often arranged as a cameo central defender. It can be seen that Real Madrid's backline is already stretched to the point of embarrassment. But in this case, Felipe Luis was still placed in the second team. This season, the Brazilian left-back has performed very well in the second team. Gao Shen remembers that after he left Real Madrid in 2006, he was loaned to Deportivo for 2 years. At first, coach Caparrós did not trust him and only let him serve as a substitute, but as the team's performance plummeted, Caparrós was sacked, and his replacement, Laudana, entrusted Felipe Luis at the end of the season, and he also showed enough strength. By the 200,708 season, Felipe Luis had firmly controlled the main position on the left side of Deportivo. Like Abeló, the Brazilian left-back is not incompetent, but lacks the opportunity to perform. As a central defender, Ramos will definitely occupy one of the positions. He was born as a right-back, and now he occasionally makes a cameo on the left, and also plays a central defender, but Gao Shen knows that the future of Ramos is in the middle. Although he is controversial in the future, no one can deny that Ramos is the world one of the top central defenders, especially in individual defensive ability. The key lies in the other central defender. Woodgate's strength is very strong, he is 1.88 meters tall, and he has excellent strength in confrontation. These are Woodgate's advantages. From a technical point of view, he has almost no obvious weaknesses. But he was easily injured. Now Woodgate is not injured and is in good shape, but the hidden danger is very big, no one knows when he will be injured again. This is very fatal, because the most important thing in the back line is stability. In deep memory, Woodgate left Real Madrid in the summer of 2006, and in the 200,607 season, he showed a very amazing performance in Middlesbrough in the Premier League, once again proving his strength, but soon again injured. It can be said that as long as he is not injured, Woodgate is a world-class central defender, but he has too many injuries. Elgra is also a veteran of Real Madrid. He was born as a midfield defender. In 2000, he was transformed into a central defender by Bosch. He served as the central defender in the middle of the five backs. Years Champions League. Since then, Elgra has been hovering between the central defender and the midfielder, and his performance has been ups and downs. Pavón, Ruben, and Mejia are all Real Madrid's youth training. Among them, Pavón is the most familiar. Zidane's Pavón policy pushed him to the forefront, but in turn, he saw Pavón's potential back then. But times have changed, and now whether it is Pavón, Lewin, or Mejia, they all lack some enthusiasm and fail to meet the expectations of the year. Now it seems that the really useful ones are Woodgate and Elgra. There are many midfielders in Real Madrid, and there are also many who are qualified for the midfielder position, but Gravesen was the first to be identified by Gao Shen. The ability of the Danish midfielder is not bad. He played a very good performance in Everton that year, not only in defence, but also in organisation and attack. He also came to Real Madrid with this performance. A very important reason for Gao Shen's interest in Gravesen is that he has a deep conflict with the Brazilian gang, especially Robinho. This is actually quite normal. In Real Madrid, no defensive player in the midfield and backcourt would have a favourable impression of the superstar in the front court, except Raul. Robinho is a typical Brazilian genius. He is very egoistic. He basically does not participate in defense, and he is very sticky with the ball. Just imagine, if he dribbles the ball to the front court and concedes the ball, he does not actively participate in the counterattack, which leads to the opponents who can accept the counterattack directly in front of Real Madrid's trailing midfielder. The conflict between the two sides has been going on for a long time, and Gao Shen still clearly remembers that Gravesen and Robinho had a big fight during Real Madrid's pre-season training in August 2006, which led to Gravesen being sold. For a genius like Robinho, Gao Shen is far away. Facts have proved that the genius of individual combat has been eliminated, and the future trend of football is teamwork. A genius like Messi needs a team to shine. This is also the reason why Gao Shen decided to suppress the Brazilian gang. The enemy of the enemy is the teammate, and Gravesen is a player worth wooing. Pablo Garcia's defensive ability is very good, but it needs to be observed again. Beckham can also play as a midfielder. Although he is very close to the Brazilian gang, Gao Shen feels that he may not support the Brazilian gang in this matter. Beckham has a very clear pursuit, and Gao Shen is confident to convince him. And the other is De La Reed. This teenager is very well-rounded, with a height of 1.85 meters, a good physical confrontation, a diligent style, strong foot skills and passing ability, and a very good overall situation. Was later praised by Bosch as the best midfielder in Spain. Of course, this compliment is a bit too much, at least compared to Harvey and others. He is a lot inferior, but it is enough to prove De La Reed's strength and potential. The only obstacle is his heart. De La Reed retired early because of a heart problem. Gao Shen has asked Lucas to arrange it and asked the team doctor to conduct a very detailed physical examination on De La Reed, especially his heart. I believe the report will be available soon. For the position of the front waist, Zidane is definitely the ideal candidate for Gao Shen. To be able to lead the French team to the World Cup final this summer, there is no doubt about the strength of the old and strong Zidane. More importantly, the French superstar knows the big picture and knows how to advance and retreat, which is very rare. With so many Real Madrid superstars, why did Florentino only bring Zidane with him when he entered the palace? Later, he focused on cultivating him and made him the head coach of Real Madrid. Is this just because of Zidane's football achievements? Zidane has already announced in advance that he will retire after the World Cup this summer, and Gao Shen believes that he is definitely not willing to end his career in this way. As long as there is a request, there is definitely a chance. In the center position, Ronaldo will not consider it for the time being. Raul, Negredo, and Soldado are all the objects that Gao Shen will consider next. There is also a Cassano on the winger, which is also a nerve knife. Use it well. The effect is very surprising. The rest of the players, such as Adrian Martin, Giraudo, Balboa, Baller, and other young players, although they all performed well in the second team, in my deep memory, I have never heard of these players having any achievements. So they were not included in the plan. When he woke up, Gao Shen found himself sleeping directly on the sofa all night. He was in the tactical library all the time last night. When he woke up in the morning, not only did he still remember what happened in the library, but he was also in good spirits, as if he had slept all night last night. This is definitely a good baby. Not to mention anything else, in the future, when others are sleeping, Gao Shen can continue to study. Mom no longer has to worry that I can't sleep because I want to study. After tidying up the house hastily, Gao Shen went out to buy breakfast, and bought 2 newspapers on the street. It is still Aspen and Marca. Like yesterday's newspapers, today's Aspen and Marca are still focusing on reporting on Real Madrid's coaching change, and the focus was on the remarks that Gao Shen declared war on the superstar at yesterday's press conference. To Gao Shen's surprise, the reactions of the 2 major media outlets, UU reading www.uuganshu.com, were torn apart. Whether or not Real Madrid should purge the superstars has always been divided, and Gao Shen has now raised it upright. This is the first time in the past few years. The 2 major newspapers have written articles to support them, but some reporters believe that even if it is purged a superstar, nor should there be a rookie who just walked out of campus to perform. However, most media reporters still believe that the problem of Real Madrid is not the superstar, but how to make good use of the superstar. In fact, every point of view has its merits. As if they were all superstars, they could be killed with a single stick? Send all the superstars away and support another wave of players, will Real Madrid be better? Not necessarily. Later, after Capello took office, he sent away so many superstars and introduced many powerful players. As a result, didn't it depend on Beckham to continue his life in the second half? Without Beckham, could Capello and his Real Madrid win the title that year? You must know that this is still when Beckham was blocked by Capello and decided to leave the United States half a year in advance. He still maintained his professionalism and helped Real Madrid finally reversed Barcelona and won the championship. How many fans have completely changed their views on Beckham because of this season? And Zidane, judging from his playing in the next few years, he is a very smart person, who understands proportions, knows how to advance and retreat, and can take care of the overall situation. Gao Shen felt that among the foreign aid superstars, Zidane and Beckham could win. Even if he can't let them do their best to support him, he must let them do their best on the court and execute the team's tactics, and he knows how to convince these 2 superstars. They both have very strong desires and pursuits.